Welcome to another edition of Ask the AD. Brian Smolder with Director of Athletics, Gene Taylor. Glad you could join us, and we're glad that you sent in a bunch of questions. I know there are a lot of people asking about the Ireland football game. We're going to get to that right from the get-go. We'll have some other news and notes from other sports to get to as well, and of course our favorite question about beer.
Yeah, always got to have beer.
So we will start with Ireland. The
It's kind
game.
of a good combination, beer and Ireland.
I didn't want to make that leap, but it is obviously a natural tie-in, and the places in Ireland, if they're not ready, they better be ready for K-State fans and Iowa State fans coming over. Farmageddon, it's a great rivalry game. What all went in? The first question we get is from @Garrett_Reese from Facebook, and I think it's a good one. The question: how did this come about? How did this get on the radar for K-State to take the home game against Iowa State and move it to Ireland?
Well, it kind of goes back quite a ways. John Anthony, who Anthony Travel is one of the main sponsors and promoters behind this game. They've now done several of them. I've known John a long time, and John and I started talking about would there ever be an opportunity for K-State, and I just wasn't sure, how Coach would want to do that, and so we really hadn't found a game that worked. And then he presented the idea to me, probably 4 or 5 months ago, and said, "Hey, would you ever consider taking a conference game to week 0?" And he felt just because of the fan bases, because that's what they want. They want teams that are going to draw and are going to follow, and both of our fan bases, we know, do a great job of that. And so at first I said, well, let me talk to Coach, and I didn't think Coach would be all in yet, because it's a conference game, it's across the pond. But when Coach Kleiman talked to a couple of coaches that had been at the game, he was all in. And so then we just started from there, putting it together. We had to go to the Big 12 because the Big 12 plays a role because we're TV partners. The NCAA sort of because it's a week 0 game. And then we had to get through approvals, and here we are. And so it happened pretty quickly once we actually talked to both the coaches to come together. And so, but I think it's a great game and a great opportunity for us.
Obviously, decisions, be it any of them that we talk about on this Ask the AD, none of them happen overnight. And there's a lot of contingencies, the what-ifs that are all played out.
Right.
The fact that we'll only have 6 home games next year, plus Iowa State, a rivalry game that people look forward to having in this stadium. How did you go to the decision to decide that this was a better deal?
Yeah, they're all important, right? We hate's probably a strong word. We just don't like not having 7 home games. It affects hotels, it affects restaurants. We understand that. A couple of years ago we played Stanford in Dallas, but we still had 7 games. This year, just because in 2024 we're only going to have 6. And so that was a big factor. Jamie Pollard, the AD, and I talked a great deal about this game and the rivalry, but we both felt that game on week 0 is such a massive viewership and an opportunity to sell not only both programs from a football perspective, but from a university perspective. There's some great agriculture tie-ins. There's some great university tie-ins for both our schools. And then just to play at week 0, and then those that have gone over and experienced the game, teams before us, they just can't rave about what a great opportunities for our athletes. Many of these young men and some of our staff members, young women, have never been out of the country. And so for them to be able to have this experience, and as John Anthony says, the only people that love Americans more than Americans are Irish. And so I think the welcoming that they're going to have over there is going to be phenomenal.
It'll be a lot of fun. Of course, there are the logistical nightmares that everybody will have to get through here in a year. And again, the game is not until the fall of 2025. But So how does this affect the non-conference schedule? Because this is the question we get now from @ScottWildcat. How does the week 0 game affect the rest of the non-conference schedule for that year? Is this a week 1 game getting moved to a later in the season? So you get 2 weeks off, or 2 weeks later in the year? How does that all work?
That's where we'll work with the Big 12 when it comes to scheduling. Both coaches have talked about they would just want to come back and keep playing the regular non-conference and finish it just like it's currently scheduled. And so the conference will work with us on that. But that's a year, ironically enough, that has 2 bye weeks already, just the way the calendar works. So that's where we're going to work with them as to when that bye falls, because we don't really necessarily want it to fall where the game was originally scheduled. But that's something we'll have to work with the actual conference from a scheduling perspective. But we hope and we think it'll happen as our current non-conference schedule will stay as is. So we'll come back from Ireland and then play the remaining non-conferences and then hopefully get a break at that next opportunity.
Maybe a little bit of jet lag coming back from Ireland.
Yeah. But it'll be fun. I mean, it's going to be. I was over there years ago with Navy Notre Dame game, and it was quite the experience.
All right. So our next question from @Connor Balthazar, who asks from Twitter, Can we expect any more future football non-conference game announcements anytime soon?
Nothing I can talk about. We haven't really talked about any other games. Again, these things just kind of come up on sometimes on the last minute, or at least just a thought. There's always, folks that have wanted us to move a game, but again, we have to be really, really careful as to when and how that impacts our regular schedule. So, again, our goal is to have as many home games as 7 every year, but if the right opportunity comes along, but I'd say probably for a while we're going to be probably set where we are.
Oregon State, the most recent announcement.
Right, the recent announcement,
down
yes.
the road.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so speaking of football and staying on that theme, here's our weekly or monthly beer question. It comes from @BP Hampton from X. With the new 2-minute warning, with that new rule being in place now for football, and no beer sales in the seats, people, in his opinion, are going to head for the beer gardens in the parking lot. Should we revisit the beer policy now?
Well, it's an interesting question, but really that 2-minute warning doesn't really, we've always had timeouts, right? You still get the timeouts in the first half and the second half, and that 2 minutes probably going to fall where a lot of timeouts happen to fall typically in the fourth or the second quarter or the fourth quarter. Obviously, this is more the second quarter. So I don't know that it's really going to affect when people stay. If it's a good first half, they're going to stay. If we're up by a lot, then they're probably going to leave anyway before the 2-minute warning. But not sure it's going to spur beer sales in the stadium. There's a lot more to that one then.
The beer policy gets revisited every year.
It does.
Regardless of the 2-minute warning or not.
That's right.
Next question from @JoeBagley90, and this is a baseball question. Baseball team heading towards postseason, we hope. Are there any plans to pad the gates at Twinton Family Stadium after this past weekend? Joe's referencing a play, as we'll see here. David Bishop, first baseman for K-State, kind of a freak play, just racing down the first base side, runs into where the concrete wall juts out just a little bit. There's a beautiful metal gate there, and he caught the gate just wrong. Right. And there are some temporary pads on there. But
yeah, we're going to pad that up. Obviously, it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, but we're very fortunate that it wasn't more of a serious injury. I'm sure he's going to recover, but yeah, we'll pad that up and make sure that hopefully they don't run into the wall again.
Well, the one thing that people ask about facility stuff from time to time, right? Are we done doing facilities? The big projects are done, but this is an example of small little projects that will happen across the athletic department footprint. It would
sure, you're always looking at facilities and upgrades and regular maintenance and just trying to make sure you stay on top of major issues that might pop up. So yeah, there's always little things that could go on every year.
Speaking of other things that go on every year, it's always off-season of portal, not only just for student athletes, but also for coaches, people coming after coaches. We've got great coaches here at K-State. One of them was Jerome Tang this off-season. This question comes from @KRiley111 on X, who asks, what is the new wording in the Jerome Tang contract that kept Coach Tang here?
Well, a lot of it, there really is not a lot of new wording. It's just an addendum or amendment to his contract that just readjusted some of his financial stuff that we agreed to keep him here. It was certainly, I think, a fair number, and we've added a year or two. I can't remember the actual number. I think it was 2 years, and then we've adjusted some of his salary. Will go up a little bit, and some opportunities for a little bit more money for his assistant coaches as well.
The battle for coaches, do you see it never ending with the two that we have in Jerome Tang and Chris Kleiman?
Good news, bad news, right? They have success, and people recognize the success, and they want to maybe have that opportunity at their institution. And there's may come a point where somebody's going to offer dollars that we can't match, and then if that's the case, we'll have to, pat them on the back. But our goal is to keep him here and do everything we can to keep him here as long as we can keep him here.
One of the things that the athletics department has embraced in efforts to try and help coaches is NIL. We've talked about Wildcat NIL on this show and elsewhere throughout our time. Ahern Fund recently announced that they're in their 60th year celebration and 60 days of giving during this time. Why is the Ahern Fund also important to give to, in addition to Wildcat NIL?
Well, the Ahern Fund, as we know, is really our operational dollars and our scholarship dollars primarily. And so those numbers are big for us. The Ahern Fund funds about $25 million a year of our revenue, and that's a big number in terms of our ability to stay competitive. So we've asked all of our donors to consider both, that they don't take from the Ahern to give to NIL, that both are important. We kind of couched it as the NIL as our new facility capital campaign, which it really isn't a facility, but that's kind of what donors have done in the past. They've given to Ahern, and they've helped us with our facilities. So now we're asking the same thing. Continue to give to Ahern, but also if you want to give to NIL, just don't take one to give to the other. And most everybody has been really, really good at understanding that and participating that way.
It's been a fun spring season to this point already. Some sports have already wrapped up postseason play, and others are getting ready for their stretch run. Track and field, I know, is just around the corner, beginning their last home meet, and then off to the postseason. Baseball, we hope this year seems to be in a good spot as well.
Yeah, they got to finish strong, and like Pete, I think he's scheduled aggressively this year to make sure they are in a position that, the committee, once they get down to that, it's out of their hands, and they just look at the body of work, and they get in with that body of work and maybe even the Big 12 championship.
Yep, that'll be all on the table for them here down the stretch. Thank you, as always, for doing these. I know it assures people a little bit and reassures them. There is no big news right now from the conference, which is a good thing.
That's a good thing.
And from that standpoint, and I get a question a lot, just like, hey, are we going to be okay? Yes, it will be okay.
We're going to be fine. But big event this weekend.
That's right. Power Cat auction coming up this weekend. Auction items already available on the website through kstatesports.com, and get to the Ahern Fund. That's where you can find all those items, and you'll be there coming up this weekend.
Yeah, it might be there's some really fun items on the live auction that I think if you don't have a ticket, if there's still tickets available, you might want to at least certainly go online and look at those opportunities.
Not just items, but also experiences that you can get with K-State teams and behind the scenes stuff as well. Thanks as always for doing this.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Gene Taylor, Director of Athletics, the nation's best, joining us here on Ask the AD. Keep those questions coming through social media channels. We'll be back in another month or two and put a bow on the 23-24 campaign. Until then, for Gene, I'm Brian Smoller. Thank you for watching.